You have plans, good ones. You know what you want to do with your life. You've pictured it 100 times. The freedom, the pride, the quiet confidence of finally becoming who you know you could be. But somehow, days turn into weeks, weeks into years, and you're still standing in the same place. You tell yourself you're preparing. You tell yourself you're being smart. You tell yourself you'll start when the timing feels right. But deep down, you wonder something you're afraid to say out loud. Why haven't I moved yet? If that question feels familiar, this story is for you. Because once, in a small coastal town, there lived a man who had everything he needed to begin, except the courage to push away from shore. And one quiet conversation changed his life forever. Stay with me. Rayan was 29 years old and lived near the ocean. Not the vacation kind of ocean with resorts and crowds. This was a working coast, fishing boats, old docks, weathered wood, salt in the air. Rayan loved the sea. He read about it, watched documentaries about sailors and explorers, followed channels about life on the water. His dream was simple but powerful. He wanted to sail. Not around the world, not for fame, just to take his own small boat out beyond the harbor and feel what it was like to trust himself. In his garage sat a modest sailboat, white paint slightly faded, ropes neatly coiled, everything in working order. He had bought it 3 years earlier, and in 3 years, it had never left the dock. Rayan always had reasons. I need to study the tides more. I should upgrade the sails first. I'll go once I'm more confident. Next season will be better. He knew every sailing term, every safety rule, every possible mistake someone could make. He was prepared, but he wasn't moving. Every Saturday morning, Rayan walked down to the marina with a notebook. He would sit on the dock beside his boat and plan. Routes, weather patterns, emergency procedures. Other sailors came and went. They waved, asked if he was heading out. Not today, Rayan would say with a smile. Just getting ready. They nodded politely and sailed away. Rayan watched their boats shrink into the distance, and something heavy would settle in his chest. At night, Rayan told himself he was disciplined, responsible, not reckless like others. But in quiet moments, a different thought crept in. What if I'm just afraid? He pushed it away. Fear didn't fit his self-image. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't careless. He had a dream. So why did it feel safer to think about sailing than to actually sail? One evening, Rayan stood on the dock at sunset. The water was calm, the wind gentle, perfect conditions. Still, his boat stayed tied. As the sky turned orange and purple, Rayan felt something close to grief. Not for what he lost, but for what he had never tried. He whispered to himself, if not today, when? The sea didn't answer, but the next morning, someone else did. At the far end of the marina lived an old man named Thomas. Everyone knew him. He built boats by hand, slowly, carefully. His hands were rough, his back slightly bent, but his eyes were calm and clear. Rayan had passed him many times but never spoken. That morning, Thomas was sanding a wooden hull. Rayan watched for a moment, then said, "Your boats are beautiful." Thomas looked up and smiled. "Thank you. They float because they're used." That line stuck with Rayan. He hesitated, then asked, "Can I ask you something?" Thomas nodded. Rayan gestured toward the water. "I know everything about sailing, but I can't seem to start." Thomas didn't laugh. didn't judge. He wiped his hands and said, "Tell me, what do you think will happen if you leave the dock?" Rayan opened his mouth and stopped. Images flooded his mind, making mistakes, looking foolish, failing in front of others, proving he wasn't as capable as he imagined. "I might mess up," Rayan said quietly. Thomas nodded. "Yes, you will." The words landed gently, but firmly. Thomas led Rayan to the edge of the dock. "You see this harbor?" he asked. "It's safe, calm, protected." Rayan nodded. "This is where boats are built," Thomas continued, "and repaired and admired." Then he looked Rayan in the eye. "But boats don't become boats here." Rayan frowned. "They become boats," Thomas said, "when they face water they didn't plan for. Waves, wind, uncertainty. That's when you find out what holds," Thomas said, "and what doesn't." Rayan felt exposed. "I just don't want to fail," he admitted. Thomas smiled softly. "Failing isn't the danger," he said. "Staying here forever is." Thomas picked up a loose rope and let it fall into the water. "Do you know what sinks most dreams?" he asked. Rayan shook his head. "Not lack of talent," Thomas said. "Not lack of knowledge." He paused. "Fear of being ordinary at the start." Rayan felt his chest tighten. "You've been protecting a perfect version of yourself," Thomas continued. "As long as you don't sail, you can still believe you'd be great at it." Rayan swallowed. "But once you leave the dock," Thomas said, "you become a beginner. Unsteady, awkward, learning in public. And that," Thomas said gently, "is what scares people most." Thomas looked at Rayan's boat. "Untie one rope," he said. Rayan blinked. "That's it?" "Just one," Thomas replied. "No sailing, no journey, no plan." Rayan hesitated. His mind raced with excuses. But slowly, he reached down and untied a single knot. The boat drifted inches away from the dock. Nothing dramatic happened. No disaster. No applause. But something shifted inside Rayan. Thomas nodded. "Tomorrow, untie another." The next day, Rayan returned. He untied 2 ropes. The boat floated freely, still close. His heart pounded. The 3rd day, he pushed off, just a few feet. The engine stalled once. He panicked, restarted, sweat on his hands, embarrassment rising. But he didn't turn back. He stayed. On the 4th day, he left the harbor. Not far, not long. But for the first time, the dock disappeared behind him. Rayan wasn't confident. He was shaky, slow, imperfect. But he was moving. Weeks passed. Rayan sailed short trips, made mistakes, learned the hard way. Some days were rough. Some days were calm. But each time he returned, he felt something new. Not pride in imagining, but pride in doing. He noticed something else too. Once he started sailing, starting other things became easier. He stopped waiting for certainty, stopped waiting for confidence. Confidence came after movement, not before. Here's the truth most people never hear. You don't start because you feel ready. You feel ready because you start. Planning feels safe because it has no consequences. Action feels scary because it reveals reality. But reality is where growth lives. You are not stuck because you lack discipline. You are stuck because you are protecting an idea of yourself. The moment you act, that idea must face the world. And that's uncomfortable. But it's also the only way forward. Remember this. You don't need to leave the harbor forever. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need confidence. You need one small untied rope, one email, one page, one rep, one sentence, one honest attempt. That's how momentum begins. Quietly, imperfectly, powerfully. So when this video ends, don't plan. Do one small thing toward the life you want, not to prove anything, not to be impressive, just to move. Because boats don't become boats at the dock, and neither do you. If this story helped you, share it with someone who's been waiting too long. And in the comments, tell me one small rope you're untying today. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, push away from shore.